Okay, we'll now take questions. Just a reminder, it's one question, one follow-up. First question.
Matt Ingram, CHCH. Welcome to Hamilton, Premier.
It's great to be here. I love the hammer.
Yesterday, Hamilton City Council passed a budget that includes one of the highest property tax increases in recent years. Some of the councillors I spoke with said part of the reason is because of the province downloading costs onto municipalities. I'm wondering what your government is going to do to help people who are now going to have a fairly high tax increase.
Well, right off the hop, that's not accurate about us downloading cost. It's a total opposite, and I'm going to pass it over to my finance minister. We're helping municipalities right across this province. Unprecedented amount of monies are going into municipalities supporting them. But for the further details, I'll pass it over to our finance minister.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The Premier's 100% right. If we just talk about COVID, we spent billions of dollars supporting municipalities right across the province, including Hamilton and every municipality. Of course, we invested in broadband, $4 billion, more than any other province. In fact, more than all the provinces and the federal government combined almost to support communities. We doubled the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, doubled it to $2 billion from $1 billion, which benefits almost 400 municipalities. Of course, we didn't stop there. Last week in the budget, we really focused on some of the biggest asks from the big city mayors, which represents 70% of the population in Ontario. Their number one ask was to provide more support for mental health and addictions, and we delivered. We increased the funding by over $500 million over the next 3 years, including a 5% increase in community mental health base funding. This is money and supports that's going right into the community, and it's increasing the amount of funding. And also the second priority for municipalities, including Hamilton, was supportive housing. And we stepped up there with the homeless prevention program, an additional $202 million of new money on top of significant money that we already provide the municipalities annually. And of course, Hamilton and many cities are receiving increased funding to help right in the community. So for municipalities, we've been there in the past and we continue to be there.
I'm also wondering, will the Ford government support Monique Taylor's private members bill? That's the one that expands the Amber Alert system to include seniors. And if not, why not?
Well, that goes through our House Leader, Paul Calandra. We always discuss that. We aren't against working hand in hand with any other political stripe. So we'll discuss that and we'll make that decision.
Hey, good morning, Premier Colin DeMello from
Hi,
Global
Colin.
News. So the City of Toronto was obviously looking for an injection of cash to help fill that budget gap. It didn't materialize either in your budget or the federal budget. Chrystia Freeland is suggesting that they should come to the province of Ontario rather than going to the federal government. I'm wondering what you suggest they should do to fill that billion-dollar gap. Should they raise taxes in your view or borrow from their reserves to pay for the problems of today?
Well, thanks so much for that. And I'll get the figure off the finance minister. We supported Toronto to a couple $100 million on their shortfall. It was the feds that didn't do that. But, with the City of Toronto, it's very personal to me. I know that place like the back of my hands. You can't continuously put hat in hand and go to the province, go to the feds, even though we're pouring tons of money into Toronto and supporting them. You have to be prudent fiscal managers. You can't go out there and say, give me more revenue tools. And by the way, revenue tools, folks, is a code name for I'm going to tax the pants off the residents in Ontario. I mean, Toronto, I should say. I didn't hear anything about driving efficiencies, driving standardization, focusing on lean practices. They can't just go there and think the taxpayer is going to constantly bail them out, no matter if it's the municipal, provincial, or federal government. Guess what, folks? There's one pair of pants that money's coming from, and that is each and every one of us that are paying our taxes. So they have to start treating Toronto like they're spending their own money. Then we'll see a big change. But they have to drive efficiencies. I'll pass this again over the Minister of Finance, and he can discuss some of the areas that we're supporting Toronto in. Not to mention the largest transit project in North America, over $30 billion. Majority of it is all in Toronto.
Great points. We've been there for Toronto, as the Premier mentioned, for public health, for supportive housing through the Social Services Relief Fund, for transit. In fact, last year they asked for a couple $100 million, and we were there. The federal government committed to put money there too. So that's what I think the Deputy Mayor is referring to. We're also supporting the city. You didn't have to wait for a budget to come up to Queen's Park. We've been talking to John Tory and now Deputy Mayor McKelvey for years and working together, and that's been working. In the budget, we also announced that we are supporting Toronto and the rest of the municipalities for supportive housing. They're number one ask for Toronto. We're also supporting for them, and Toronto got $48 million of that, so that's a significant, and I think you've heard the Deputy Mayor say that she's very grateful for that, and that was their top request. We've also going to put a new rehabilitation center in Runnymede, which they were very grateful for, and integrated transit fares was another initiative that we put in the budget. So we've been talking with the Toronto. I would suggest maybe that the 23 MPs that represent the Liberals that are in caucus in Toronto, they should all go up the 401 and have a conversation in Ottawa. We have a great relationship with Ottawa, and we work very closely with them. But I think the point is that we have been working with Toronto. We'll continue to work. They've got to do their part, and every municipality has to do their part.
Okay, thank you. And Premier, can I ask about the issues with the TTC? I mean, obviously there's going to be some kind of a financial need here. Your government had set aside some money for guns and gangs as an example in this recent budget. Yep. Is it your view that the City of Toronto would be able to use that money that was set aside for guns and gangs to perhaps add more resource officers on the TTC?
Yeah, great question, Colin. That's going to be up to the Toronto Police Board to determine where that's going to go. And I just encourage them to really go out there and put money into policing, into the subways, make sure we have safe subways, safe communities. It's an absolute priority that we support our police, and I'm confident that they will, because I've never seen anything like it before. All these tragedies happening, but it has to stop. And the way it stops and the way you pick up ridership is by making sure we have a safe transit system in Toronto. And the way we have a safe transit system is our Toronto police working with our transit police and boots on the ground.
Hi, Premier Siobhan from CTV News.
Hi, Siobhan.
Marilee Fullerton, since her departure, we're not quite on mic. There we go. Since her departure last week, you're now looking at your fourth minister in this portfolio in 5 years. What assurances can you give parents with children with autism in particular who are feeling that they want to see more done on this file and have not been satisfied with the progress so far?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to mention Marilee. Marilee was a wonderful minister, wonderful part of our caucus. I know she wants to spend time with the family, and there's no harder worker than Marilee Fullerton. She contributed a tremendous amount to our team. Michael Parsa is an absolute champion. You'll see him excel like you've never seen before. But I'll never forget when I first came into office in 2018, I think it was the first month, they said, the autism file is bankrupt. And I'm thinking, how can it be bankrupt this quickly? It was ignored for many years under the previous administration. We doubled the funding to $600 million compared to any other government. So we're going to continue always supporting families that have children with autism. It's very close to my heart, and we just want to support them any way we can. Is there always room for improvement? Yes. Continuous improvement? Yes. But we have the money flowing, and we're going to continue to flow the money to folks.
Since Fullerton's departure, you now do not have representation from the province's second biggest city at the cabinet table. What plan, if any, do you have to address that?
Well, again, we make sure that we listen to all 444 municipalities, no matter if they have a cabinet minister or not a cabinet minister. I've been on the phone with the mayor of Ottawa almost every single day. I was on the phone this morning with him. I'm on the phone all the time. He's a great mayor, by the way. I've had more phone calls probably in the last week than I did in 4 years from the previous mayor. So you're well represented in Ottawa. We'll always take care of you. We appreciate all the hard work you do up there. I appreciate the 500 tech companies that are up there driving the economy. So we'll always be there for Ottawa.
Hi, Premier. Laura Stone, Globe and Mail.
Hi, Laura.
I wanted to get your reaction to what happened in the legislature yesterday with the First Nations groups kind of shouting at you. I noticed you didn't make eye contact with them. What was your reaction to that? And what's your plan for dealing with First Nations opposition to the Ring of Fire? Are you just going to go ahead with your plans anyway?
Well, we've consulted nonstop with the First Nations communities up there, all 9 of them. We have, for the first time, we have Webequie and Martin Falls First Nations leading the environmental assessment on the third road that's going in there. And, you know, I'm always willing to sit down. And as the you know, one of the chiefs told me, there's never been a premier that's more accessible than you have. I talk to chiefs across the province, numerous chiefs, every single week. I joke around with my minister, Greg Rickford, which is the best Minister of Indigenous Affairs. I always joke around. I said I should be the Minister of Indigenous Affairs. I just had a great meeting with the Grand Chief of Canada, Roseanne Archibald, which we have a phenomenal relationship. Yesterday we sat down, had a good chat, along with Bruce Archibald. But we're going to always make sure we take care of our First Nations community. We want to see growth and prosperity for them within their communities. It's not just about the Ring of Fire to get the critical minerals, which will make sure that there's prosperity within their communities. But what it does, it brings road access. It brings road access for fuel, it brings road access for medical, it brings road access for food and goods and services that can go in there that they never had before. These were flying communities, and it was a big struggle for them. Now, we're going to offer so many more things, but we'll always work hand in hand with our First Nations community.
Okay, and on your ask from the federal government to pause the carbon tax increase, the environment minister yesterday, the federal environment minister said that that's incredibly rich coming from you and says that you have no plan to address climate change. What's your reaction to that?
Oh boy, that guy's a real piece of work, isn't he? But anyways, you know, all he's about is, I find it ironic. We want to do EV vehicles, and we have a great relationship with the federal government. And I differentiate the leadership of Chrystia Freeland and Dominic LeBlanc versus this other minister, because they're great to work with. But I never heard anything about the Ring of Fire in the budget. That's disappointing. We're putting $1 billion to make sure we pull critical minerals out of the ground to put in the EV vehicles and the batteries, to make sure we take cars off the road. Right here, we're going to Dofasco next. Right here, we're putting an electric arc furnace at Dofasco and Algoma, taking 2 million cars off the road. We're building the largest transit system in North America to get people out of their cars and get them onto the transit system. We're doing everything we can. Matter of fact, I will put our record on the environment against any government in the history of this province or right across the country. I'll make sure I give you a list on that. So I'm not into the politics. Let's move forward and let's get things done. And that's about all I have to say about that minister.
Kevin Winter, Hamilton Community News and Hamilton Spectator. So Hamilton's going to be calling or identifying homeless as an emergency. Niagara has already done that. People are dying in the streets of Hamilton. What is the provincial government going to be doing to step up and do something about it?
Well, again, I think you just mentioned Minister Bethenvolve is the money we're pouring into that right across the entire province. It's so important to get people help, get people support, no matter if there's mental health issues or addiction. We're putting money in to support them. We're putting money into the John Howard Society, and maybe what I'd like to do is pass this over to the Minister of Health, and she can address that.
So as the Minister of Finance mentioned, in Thursday's budget, you know, we had substantial increases, particularly related to mental health and addictions, 5% increase, which was very, very needed and welcomed in the sector. We, of course, through our community investments, have also done the supportive housing piece, which is a partnership with our municipalities. You know, there's no doubt that we as a government are stepping forward in a number of ministries to make sure that we have given and provided appropriate supports both to the sector but also to municipalities who ultimately provide many of those services. Thank you.
Again, the municipality yesterday, they are stepping up, but organizations like Mission Services, Salvation Army, they're not getting the money. I mean, or the money's not flowing to them. And they can't wait another year, 2 years. They need something next month.
Actually, it's funny. I just spoke to the Salvation Army. I'm a big fan of them. We'll always support them. But we're putting more money into taking care of the homelessness than any government before. We're going to continue working with municipalities. I know it's a big issue, especially in the large cities and also in the small towns. So we'll be there for them, and we're going to continue funding those programs.
Okay, this will be the last question.
Hi, Premier. Sarah Piesker from CBC Hamilton. Here at McMaster, the school is installing gas-powered generators as a way to save money by not drawing from the electricity grid during peak times. I'm wondering if this is something the province is expecting or prepared for other institutions across the province to do as a way to save money on energy?
I love the idea. I love out-of-box thinkers. They're incredible here at McMaster, and we just want to encourage everyone, think outside the box. You can't keep doing the same things over and over again and expect a different result. So I encourage them to keep thinking of creative ways of saving cost. That's what I encourage all the time, continuous improvement. McMaster is just a phenomenal school. Number one selling feature, I always say, I gave him a shout out, CD Howe, the other day. I think I got the U of T, which is an incredible school too. A little excited when I gave McMaster the shout out, David, but we have the best universities and colleges anywhere in the world right here in Ontario, and I'll put them up against anyone.
And how do you feel about the increased carbon emissions that will come from a proliferation, potentially, of gas generators?
Right, we've been listening in live to Premier Doug Ford making a healthcare announcement in Hamilton this hour, saying that they are investing an additional $33 million to add 100 undergrad medical school seats and 154 postgrad medical seats to expand the number of medical residencies in the province and bolster the healthcare workforce. Also answering several questions from reporters about issues in Hamilton, as well as safety on the TTC and Toronto city budget.